Compound interest explained. How money makes money. Imagine you have 1,000 pounds. You invest it, and after 1 year, it grows by 10%. You've made 100 pounds. So now you have 1,100 pounds. Pretty straightforward, but something interesting happens next. If your money grows by another 10%, you don't make another 100 pounds. You make 110 pounds, because you're now earning a return on 1,100 pounds. So now you have 1,210 pounds. And if that money grows again, you don't just earn money on your original 1,000 pounds. You can earn money on the money that your money already made. That is compounding. And given enough time, something that initially looks very small can become surprisingly powerful. Welcome to episode 3 of Investing Explained Simply. Today we're looking at compound interest, how money makes money. Let's start with a snowball. Imagine you're standing at the top of a huge snowy hill. You make a tiny snowball, and you start rolling it down the hill. At first, not much happens. It's still pretty small, but as it rolls, it collects more snow. Now the snowball is slightly bigger, and because it's bigger, it has a larger surface area to collect even more snow. So it grows faster, then faster again. That is a really useful way to imagine compounding. Your starting money is the original snowball. Your returns are the extra snow. And once those returns become part of your investment, they can potentially generate returns of their own. The US Investor.gov describes compound interest simply as earning interest on both your original money and the interest that has already accumulated. Simple interest versus compound interest. Let's make the difference really clear. Imagine you have 1,000 pounds. And let's pretend, purely to make the math simple, that you earn 10% every year. With simple interest, you'd make 100 pounds every year. Year 1, 1,100 pounds. Year 2, 1,200 pounds. Year 3, 1,300 pounds. You're always earning 10% of the original 1,000 pounds. But compounding works differently. With compounding, year 1, 1,000 pounds becomes 1,100 pounds. Year 2, you're now earning 10% on 1,100 pounds, so it becomes 1,210 pounds. Year 3, you're earning 10% on 1,210 pounds. That becomes 1,331 pounds. The amount being used to generate the next return keeps getting larger. A tree that grows. Trees. Here's another way of imagining it. Suppose you plant one apple tree. Your tree eventually produces apples. But instead of eating every apple, you take some of the seeds and plant them. Now you have more trees. Those new trees eventually produce apples too. You take some of their seeds and plant even more trees. Eventually, you're no longer relying on the original tree. You have trees producing apples, which create trees which produce more apples. That's compounding. In investing, something similar can happen when returns remain invested rather than being removed and spent. Your investment can generate returns. Those returns stay invested, and those returns may then generate additional returns. Why doesn't it look impressive at first? This is where compounding becomes fascinating. Imagine you invest 1,000 pounds and somehow receive exactly 8% every year. Again, this is only a mathematical illustration. Real investment returns do not arrive as a guaranteed 8% every year. After 1 year, you'd have 1,080 pounds. Not exactly life-changing. After 5 years, you'd have roughly 1,469 pounds. Still not extraordinary, but keep going. After 10 years, around 2,159 pounds. After 20 years, around 4,661 pounds. And after 30 years, just over 10,000 pounds. You originally invested only 1,000 pounds. At a hypothetical constant 8% annual return, 1,000 pounds would grow to about 10,063 pounds after 30 years, and you didn't put another penny in. This is why compound growth tends to look unimpressive at the beginning and much more dramatic later. Think about dominoes. Imagine you've lined up thousands of dominoes. You push the first one. At the beginning, you've only knocked over one domino, then 2, then 10, then 100. Then suddenly, thousands are falling. The dramatic part happens near the end. But none of it could have happened without the first domino. Compounding behaves a little like that. People sometimes look at the first few years and think, this isn't doing very much. But the early years are helping to create the larger base from which future growth may occur. That's why time is so important. The formula behind compounding. You don't need to be a mathematician to invest, but the maths behind compounding is actually quite simple. The basic formula is where FV means the future value, PV means how much you started with, R is the rate of return, and N is the number of periods that your money compounds. But the most important part isn't memorizing the formula, it's understanding that little exponent at the end. Time multiplies the effect. What happens if you keep adding money? So far, we've imagined investing £1,000 once. But most people won't invest like that. Imagine instead that you invest £100 every month. That's £1,200 a year. Let's again use a completely hypothetical 8% annual return, compounded monthly, purely to demonstrate the mathematics. Over 30 years, you would personally contribute £36,000. But mathematically, if every contribution somehow received that constant 8% annual return, the account would grow to approximately £149,000. Now extend that to 40 years, you would have contributed £48,000. But the mathematical result would be approximately £349,000. Most of that £349,000 would not have come directly from the £100 monthly payments. It would have come from the hypothetical growth accumulating on previous contributions and previous growth. Again, these figures are illustrations, not forecasts. Real investments rise and fall, and actual results depend on returns, costs, taxes, and when those returns occur. Investor.gov provides a compound interest calculator specifically to help people explore how variables such as starting amount, contributions, return, and time change the result. Time versus money. Now imagine two investors. We'll call them Alex and Ben. Alex starts investing when he's young. Ben waits. Ben later decides, I'll just invest more money and catch up. And sometimes he can, but there's something Ben can't buy back: time. Because money invested earlier has more opportunities to compound. Imagine planting two trees. You plant tree A today. You wait 20 years. Then you plant tree B. You can give tree B more water, more fertilizer, more attention, but you cannot instantly give it the 20 years of growth that tree A has already experienced. This is one reason starting earlier can be so powerful. Not because young people have some magical investment advantage. They simply potentially have more time. But there's an important catch. You've probably heard phrases such as the miracle of compound interest, or compound interest will make you rich. We need to be careful. Compounding is mathematics. It doesn't guarantee that an investment will produce positive returns. If your investment falls, losses can compound too. Imagine £1,000 loses 10%. You now have £900. Then it loses another 10%. You're left with £810. So compounding isn't automatically good. It simply means that percentage changes are applied to a changing base. If that base is growing, compounding can work in your favor. If it is shrinking, the maths can work against you. Why investment compounding is different from bank interest. This distinction is really important. Imagine a savings account pays a stated rate of interest. You may be able to calculate fairly easily how interest will accumulate, subject to the account's terms and rate changes. Investments are different. A stock market investment doesn't normally say, "Congratulations, you will receive exactly 8% every year." One year might be positive, another might be negative, another might barely move. There can also be dividends, fees, taxes, and other factors. So when you see examples saying £10,000 invested at 8% becomes, that does not mean an investor can simply select an 8% button. It is an illustration of what would happen if that return were achieved. The FCA stresses that investment values can rise and fall, and that longer investment periods can help investors ride out some shorter-term fluctuations, while returns remain uncertain. Reinvesting matters. Remember our apple tree? Imagine the tree gives you 100 apples. You have two choices. You could eat all 100, or you could use some of the seeds to create more trees. Something similar can happen with investment income. For example, some companies pay shareholders dividends. You could take those dividends and spend them, or you might reinvest them. If they are reinvested, you potentially acquire more investments. Those investments can potentially produce their own future returns. So compounding isn't simply about an asset's price increasing. Reinvested income can also contribute to compound growth. The enemy of compounding: interruptions. Imagine our snowball again. It's rolling beautifully down the hill, but every few meters, you stop it, break a piece off, then start again. It can still grow, but not as quickly. Investing can work similarly. If returns are repeatedly removed rather than reinvested, there is less capital available to generate future returns. Fees can have a similar effect. A small percentage may appear insignificant, but if a charge is repeatedly deducted over many years, that's money that isn't available to compound. This is one reason investment costs matter. The effect isn't simply, I paid a small fee this year. You also lose the future growth that money could potentially have generated. Compounding needs 3 ingredients. Let's simplify everything we've discussed. Imagine growing a tree. Compounding needs 3 things. Number 1, capital. You need something to start with, the seed. That might be 10 pounds, 100 pounds, 1,000 pounds, or regular contributions over time. Number 2, return. Something needs to create growth, the sunlight and water. Without positive returns, there is nothing positive to compound. Number 3, time. This is perhaps the ingredient people underestimate most. You can plant the seed, you can water it, but you cannot shout, "Grow faster!" and turn a sapling into a 100-year-old oak tree tomorrow. Some things simply need time, and compound growth is one of them. Why people get compounding wrong? There's another trap. People see dramatic compound growth graphs and assume, if I just find an investment with a massive return, I'll become wealthy really quickly. But remember episode 2, risk and reward. If somebody claims they can reliably produce 30%, 50%, or 100% returns every year, you shouldn't simply put a bigger number into a compound interest calculator and start planning your retirement. You should ask, what risk would I have to take? Why should this investment produce that return? Could I lose my capital? Is the return guaranteed? Who is making the claim? Is the investment regulated? Very high potential returns can involve very high risks, including the possibility of losing all the money invested. Compounding can't rescue a terrible investment. If the tree dies, it doesn't matter how long you wait. The most important lesson. Let's return to our snowball. At the top of the hill, it's tiny. After a few meters, it's still tiny. Halfway down, it's getting interesting. Near the bottom, it's enormous. And this is perhaps the most important thing to understand about compounding. The biggest advantage isn't necessarily having the biggest starting amount. It's giving productive money enough time to potentially build upon itself. 100 pounds earns a return. That return stays invested. The larger amount earns another return. That return stays invested. And the process repeats. Money, making money, which can then make more money. So what is compound interest? Compound interest means earning interest not only on your original money, but also on interest that has previously been added. In investing, we can think more broadly about compound growth, returns being retained or reinvested so that future returns can potentially be earned on a larger amount. And that's why 4 things can have an enormous effect on long-term outcomes. How much you start with, how much you continue adding, the returns you achieve, and how much time you give those returns to compound. But there is another problem. If your money is sitting still while everything around you becomes more expensive, you could technically have the same number of pounds while becoming poorer in terms of what those pounds can actually buy. And that brings us perfectly to episode 4. Inflation Explained: Why Your Money Loses Value.